You fucking bastard!
Tits. You up out of that. Tits. Here we go.
Yeah. Groovy, man.
Wanker.
Fucking wanker.
No. Silly, man.
Pound coin holder. Split in half.
Yeah. Groovy, man.
Sure. Give it up.
No. Silly, man.
Pound coin holder. Pound coin holder. Pound coin holder. Split in half. Pound coin holder. Split in half. Wanker.
Fuck it up.
Pound coin holder. Split in half. Pound coin holder. Split in half. Feel your tits. Slag.
It's good. I love that. That's
there we go. That's
rocking.
Hertz. Did you even go Hertz? Hertz. He had this thing. He had this thing about Hearts, the football club, and it was called it Hertz. That's why that.
I thought he was saying Heil.
No, Hertz. Heart. Midlothian. Edinburgh. Not Dusseldorf or fucking Berlin or whatever. Anyway, good evening. Welcome to Raconteurs News on a Tuesday night with me, Jason Holmes, your bald-headed, bespectacled, but very, very handsome and very, very, very sexy cripple. Who's presenting tonight. And as you can tell, I've been watching football tonight, so I've had a couple of beers. But anyway, I've got Jimmy with me. Jimmy's over in Ireland. Good evening, Jimmy. How are you, my friend?
That's great. I just noticed people. Jimmy has shrunk, by the way, and I don't know. I kind of reduced the size of the video just a little bit because it kind of looks grainy. When I do it full screen, it looks a little bit grainy. So I shrunk it down just a little bit, just to normalize myself, humanize myself just a small bit. But apart from that, I'm okay. So I'm not squeaking just yet. So I haven't shrunk that badly.
Right, well, we're broadcasting tonight in colour and on YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble as well. So we're live on Rumble. It seems to be going well. It seems to be working. So excellent. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Rumble because that's where we're going to end up with everybody else that's persona non grata on YouTube. Anyway, we've got tonight, we are starting very, very late. It is very, very late. It's 11:30 at night. And a lot of people, particularly listeners to this show, will know that I don't stop up that late, ever. We are like monging out on settee or some stuff like that. So it is, and we've got a specific reason that we've got doing that, because at 12 o'clock, joining us is going to be Bart Sibrel, the maker. He produced a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, and he's got some new information from the last time he were here, which were about a year ago, I think. It were about April last year. So the last time he was here. But in the meantime, some new information has become available for him to share. I think it's always been there, but it's not been able for him to share as people have been, compromised and alive and things like that. And now everything's gone. So we've got some new stuff that's coming up at around about midnight tonight. in about 25 minutes, 24 minutes, in fact. But before then, Jimmy, what's going on in the world, my friend? And I've got some news as well that I want to tell everybody about.
I didn't focus too much in on the news tonight, but actually the information from Bart Sibrel is actually quite recent, because the chap who he's going to be talking about tonight only died on I think it was 22nd of February 2022. So it's kind of recent information, and it's a video that was only supposed to be released on the event of his death. So I can't wait. We'll we'll be talking about Bart with this earlier on. But as far as the news goes, the news is just, it's crazy, man. And I just haven't even looked into it. I have a load of stuff bookmarked for Friday night in anticipation of the show tonight, because I just wanted to do a bit of a deep dive into Bart and his material, because I haven't done much looking into the moon theory, the moon landing hoax, because I figured out about maybe 23 years ago or so that it was a load of bollocks, man. So but it's been fascinating just looking at today and at all of Bart's work, you know. So I didn't focus on the news too much, Jay, and not to cut you short or anything like that. But
listen, that's good. We don't want fucking news anyway. What's news? It's all a load of bollocks. So let's concentrate on historical events like this. And I just wanted to mention that it's really strange, but. We've got Bart Sibrel on tonight, and today I've noticed on Twitter that there are two people that I wouldn't associate with the moon hoax, but have tweeted about the moon hoax. One is Denise Welsh. I don't know if you know her, but she was recently at a birthday party with Tom Cruise. Or at Tom Cruise's birthday party or something like that. We're on Oscar night anyway, but she went at a party with Tom Cruise. So like, she's like, you know, somebody that's obviously gets quite a bit of attention. But she's tweeted tonight about the moon landing hoax. So it should be interesting. And there's somebody's pointed out in the chat that Spanish Chicken said Bart's really popular lately, been on a few UK podcasts. So perhaps there is something in this new stuff, and maybe this is going to give a little bit of a boost to the moon landing hoax, which has sort of become really like a real side issue, because there's so much in the news, you know, currently, that you can't really look back at old things anymore, because there's so much at the moment. You know what I mean? It's
kind of one of the iconic stories of our time, really. Like, for us who've been into all these alternative topics for so long, it really is an iconic theme, right? You know, because we've all been exposed to it at some level, in some way, shape, or form over the last 25 years, ever since the inception of the internet, when the internet just started going like mainstream, sort of. When was that? About in the mid 90s, I suppose. It's like when we all started like getting really online, and people started like buying into this idea, and then there was this whole subculture online, and the bulletin boards, and all these strange.
Are you talking about the golden age of the internet, which is what it was? It was the golden age of the internet. Everyone had a voice. People weren't as nasty as they are now, and they weren't as so you know. Okay, there were sections that were like that, but yeah, I mean, new ideas could then, but you know, reach a big audience because of the internet back then, because they've not got the restrictions on the internet that they've got now.
Yeah, it wasn't even so much like these days. Like, it's hard to know like what sort of restrictions are in place, because like you don't know for certain like what the proportion is of bots to real people, you know. And we're kind of like in this like crazy zone, like where this kind of like non-existent AI is sort of like interfering in and getting in between the people's conversations. So and you get the impression that there's all these people engaging in this conversation, when in fact it's probably not the case at all.
No, you're right. You're right. Exactly right. 2016 is when it went over 50%. So in 2016, believe it or not, so how long ago is that? 7 years ago. that it went over the threshold of um, of um, bots to human interaction on the internet. 2016. So it's 7 years later. How much has technology advanced? Most of this, I mean, it's the dead internet theory all over, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
There's so much rubbish on the internet now. It's like how do you filter the rubbish? Like even if you're just trying to find sort of like simple. I was trying to search a topic. I'm not going to spill the beans on the topic that Bart's going to be talking about tonight, but I was trying to find information about the particular topic that is in question tonight that he wants to highlight, and there's nothing about it, absolutely nothing, and. And I'm just thinking, how did this go under the fucking radar? Like, and but in general, like you got so much nonsense on the internet. If you try to go, unless you got the exact title of an article that you're looking for, it's gone to the stage where you just can't find what
you
you're
see,
looking
it's
for.
not even that, though, Jimmy. It's not even that. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago I showed an article on here, and you tried to search for it and couldn't find it, but you saw it when I gave you the link, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just that certain things are being. It really is that certain things are just being suppressed.
Yeah, when me and Sean McGee used to be doing our news show back in the TNS days, where back around 2012, 2013, and he used to be doing admin on various different places like nuclearnews.net and stuff like that. And that was when I first came to the realization, because he was pointing it out to me at the time. He says, I can't find this article unless I do a specific search on the exact wording of the title. I can't fucking find it. It doesn't exist, right? It just doesn't exist. And, and that's when I started to realize, oh shit, man, you're fucking right, man. That information is being sort of like suppressed, like, so this was back around 2013, 2014, man, so we're they've been at this quite some time. Obviously they've refined their procedures now. They're getting very, very good at it now. So they actually have, like, they've got great technologies now for marking and like ways of and especially if you've got AI sort of able to generate 1,000 articles with a similar type of headline and similar type wording, like the chances of you being able to find the right article are next to near zero, next to near zero.
Oh, completely. They're completely near zero. In fact, they're on zero. That's where they are. If you look, let's just say somebody said, if you look for Raconteurs news, you're not going to find it unless it's, it's something that you subscribe to and you already know. You're not going to find it. I can't find things I go on YouTube and I look for the actual fucking the people that have got the film, and I can't see it. I can't see anything. It's all being sanitized. It's been homogenized. So, and they're even being able to do it now off, like if you've got an hard drive connected to your computer and your computer's connected to internet, anything that's on your hard drive, they don't want you to see. It's just gone. I've got an old hard drive that used to have loads of like 9/11 films on it, but I haven't got hardly any on them anymore. And I believe that's because it's been left plugged in my computer when it's been on internet, and they've just it's just been deleted. There were so many films about 9/11 back in day. Ones that were there were one that were called the 9/11 news report that you never saw. And all these different things. There were so many, and it's just all been deleted and removed and sterilized and homogenized and just made into this sort of sludge of just dog shit, utter dog shit that you have to go through even just to be able to just think about all the utter sludge dog shit you have to go to be able to do anything on the internet.
Yeah, I'll tell you a good one, Jay, because I'm subscribed to the Raccoons, obviously, like, and I can go and I can search for the Raccoons in the YouTube search tab, right? And it won't suggest the channel to me. It won't. It just won't. Like, it's touch and go whether it'll actually come up as an option, like, because obviously I don't have it bookmarked. I know what it's called. I'll go type in Raconteurs, and it's still not suggesting Raconteurs News. I have to go and type it out. Sometimes even I do type it all out, Raconteurs News. It still won't show up in suggested responses on YouTube. So that's, and then the odd day it will pop up like into suggested video, but like most of the time it won't pop up into suggested results on YouTube search. It's mad. It's really, really mad.
It is. It's crazy, and I can't even say. When I'm talking about when we're getting towards 15-minute cities, when we're talking about 15-minute cities and people essentially being locked into a gridded area, and having to pay or do something. They have to do something to be able to get out of that area to go and visit another area or do another thing.
You have to wank on OnlyFans.
Exactly. And when you think about how if you think about really like the golden age of the internet, which were probably 2010, that were probably the golden age of the internet. That's where most of the the stuff that were interesting and worth looking at, it was around. I mean, there's no Charlie Bit My Finger, which were just a thing that had happened, and somebody had put it up on YouTube, and now that kid, that kid will put his finger in fucking Charlie Bit My Finger. That kid's now got a yacht. Like, that kid has now got a yacht, but there's none of that anymore. It's all whatever ticks the boxes, and this is what algorithms do. Instead of people choosing for themselves, algorithms choose for you, and like it's all box ticking these days. It's all ticking boxes. Are you trans? Are you trans friendly, or you fucking some other weird shit and all that? And you've got to tick them boxes, otherwise you're not getting anywhere. You're not getting anywhere. Otherwise, you just aren't.
I mean, one of the most iconic stories of our time, which was an interview, or it was a documentary, an Australian documentary, which was done back in the late 90s regarding Julian Assange. And this video was available 2 years ago on YouTube, and you can't find it anymore. And the whole story around Julian Assange in this documentary was where he started his life as a hacker, and how he progressed, and as he progressed, he started hacking into government agencies, he started hacking into the NSA, he was hacking into NASA, he was hacking into all sorts of different places. And then later on, as he sort of like networked with people, like, and there's one individual in particular, can I even say his name on YouTube? But I'll say his name, Pengo. If you try to go to find that documentary online, which would clearly implicate Assange like as being possibly, allegedly, a Russian asset, right? You can't find that anymore. Why is it like in these times where like we're all supposed to be afraid of Russia? How come you can't find an article which clearly implicates Julian Assange being up to his neck with the KGB? It's like, what the fuck is going on here? Who,
Yeah, fucking look. That's the thing. Is that it's fucking Julian Assange and Russia and all that is just a load of bollocks, right? That's somebody else's fucking problem. It shouldn't be our problem, right? It's not our problem, is it? Don't belong to us. It's not our fucking problem. Julian Assange did what he did, and yeah, okay, he should be free. I know he should be freed. If that's what you believe. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion, but
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a divisive thing. It's a way to divide us. What I'm talking about is back in the day, I used to come home from work, and when I used to work DJing, and so I'd sort of work till 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I'd come home and it'd be 5 or 6 when I got in the house, and then I'd put a YouTube video on, and there were tons and tons of great videos that you could watch, talks at places. You know, Brian Gerrish giving talks, and I don't care what you think about them. These talks, you had to listen to them, because then you get a better understanding. If you listen to people you don't agree with, it gives you a better understanding of what you're trying to convey to other people. But like, I watched a 9-hour fucking video from a bloke called David Wynn Miller. Do you remember him?
I remember him. Yeah. A fraud, a total fraud.
Complete fraud. But what a fucking story, though. It was a 9-hour story, and so you were watching it in bits. But when you got to end, you thought to yourself, yeah, that were a complete fraud. But you didn't think to yourself, I've wasted all that time. You didn't think to yourself that. And that's what's wrong now, is that you watch something and it's fucking dog shit. And then you think to yourself, I've wasted all that time. I've wasted that time. Whereas when I watched a 9-hour fucking David Wynn Miller talk,
Macro, it was about language. It was about this new language.
He was talking about syntax, parte syntax, fucking grammar and all that shit.
Yeah,
but I watched that. I watched that 9 hours, and I didn't think, after the end of that 9 hours, I didn't think, fucking hell, I wish I'd not watched that. Whereas there's tons of stuff now I watch for 30, 40 seconds, and you think, why did I watch that? That were a load of bollocks. You know what I mean? But if I watched a 9-hour video, then it weren't such a load of bollocks. It was because I got some information from it. You know what? I did think because this bloke said he'd got no adrenal glands and he'd been a time traveler and all this sort of shit. But it was really interesting. It was interesting to listen to.
And one of his most fantastic claims was that he rewrote the Irish Constitution in something like 1 or 2 nights for the Irish government, and that was it. Huh? Are you fucking mental? Look
at this. Look at this here. Mascara snake, parse syntax bollocks. Yeah, we're bollocks. I'm not talking about the how genuine the information were. I'm talking about there were a 9-hour video that kept me listening to it for fucking 9 hours on different sittings. This is what I don't get about you. Why do you have to, because you've got such a bad opinion about somebody, why do you have to fucking then be out and go, oh, that's fucking, it's just nonsense. If you don't like it, fucking move on. Unless people are fucking really causing division. But I don't think David Wynn Miller could be accused of causing division. He got his story. If you listen to it, I will listen to it, and I was enthralled by it. I didn't believe it all, and I don't have to believe it all. You lot think that you have to believe everything you fucking watch. You don't believe this. It's bullshit. This is just a fucking house. Jimmy's not even real.
I know. Oh man, it's crazy. But at the end of the day, I know where you're coming from, Jay, because I found him very engaging, right, at the time, and it was all stuff I was fucking studying really fucking hard at the time. So I wanted to know what everybody had to fucking say. Hell, I listened to fucking about 1,000 shows of Gordon fucking Hall. It's like, holy shit, man. He was brilliant, like absolutely fucking brilliant. I don't say that it would fucking work in a real court, like, but at the end of the day, he did appear to have some success with it, and it was very, very engaging. And to this day, I still carry forth parts of what I took from his shows. And I'd listened to probably 100 hours of Gordon Hall, really. And so, it is what it is. And look who has arrived.
I know who's arrived. I just want to say this, just to James Owens, like this, lol. I don't know what that means. Anyway, I just want to say before we get into, we get Bart on, because Bart is here. Bart Sibrel is in the room. I just want to say, I've spoken to Super Leeds tonight. Now, for anybody who don't know, Super Leeds is a listener of ours. He's been a supporter for years. And I've spoken to him tonight. He phoned me up. And this is the thing about him is the last time I saw him is he gave me COVID when I went to visit him in hospital. And then tonight he's phoned me up because I lost his number. I couldn't get in touch with him. He's phoned me up. And as he was phoning me up, as he was on the phone, Sheffield Wednesday went 2 goals down. So I think he's a bit of a...
He's bad luck.
He is bad luck. Is a bit of a jinx for me, but yeah. But anyway, he's okay. He says hello to everybody, and he wishes you all the best. So I just wanted to make sure they got that in because I didn't want to. I didn't want to miss out. Everyone's been wondering where Leeds is, and he's okay. He's okay at the moment. But good evening, Bart. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Jason?
Yeah, we're really good. We're really good.
Bart.
I see we all have our vices, cigarettes there, hot chocolate here, and of course he's addicted to eyeglasses. It's very sad.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, we do like to. Well, we can't really do anything about his vices. But anyway, we've finally been able to get together. We've been trying to sort this out since like February. I think January. Before I even went away. So, yeah, it's great to see you. And
so you went away, so you apparently escaped. That's nice to hear. And
I went away. I went to Lanzarote and, had a couple of weeks falling into me into the water. But, all good stuff. And we've got some new stuff from you, haven't we? How was about you? Just give us an introduction to the new information that you want to partake with us.
Yeah, I guess a quick summary. I mean, I'm a filmmaker. I've been a filmmaker for about 40 years, and I produced about 100 films. And my most infamous one is called "The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." You can just go to my website, which is my last name.com, S as in Sam, I, B as in boy, R-E-L. Sibrel.com, and you can see it for free. You just click on the top left button. It says Moon Man Video Links. I just wrote a book about this, and the book is kind of interactive. There are 16 video links in the book. I basically say, watch a link, then read a chapter, watch a link, and then you'll know what I'm talking about in the next chapter. All those links you can watch for free now. If you want the book, it's in audio. I read it, or Kindle or print. And so the first film that I made about the moon landings is called "The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." And this film is financed by someone who builds rockets for NASA, who's a multimillionaire who knows that the moon missions are fake, wants to remain anonymous so his stock doesn't go down. So in any case, he knows the moon missions are fake. He builds rockets for NASA, and he thought it was his patriotic duty to expose the moon landing fraud. When I started producing this film, and these couple of films we made cost $1 million, I was producing it under the theory it might be true that they faked it. And there certainly was a lot of red flags that seemed odd to me. 2 of the 3 astronauts on the main mission refused to be interviewed about it, with rare exception, unless the president asked them to. And the administrator of NASA resigns without explanation before the first Apollo mission. Kind of weird. Then the Soviets were first in everything. First satellite, first man, first woman, first crew of 3, first spacewalk. And suddenly we leaped ahead. NASA has never kept a schedule in their entire history. Just to put a telescope into Earth orbit, they were 10 years behind schedule. They said in 2014 they would have humans orbiting the moon in 2018. They were 100% behind schedule and only had mannequins orbiting the moon, you see? So the farthest that NASA can send astronauts today is 1/1000th the distance to the moon, to the space station. So what they're really saying is that in 1969, when all of NASA combined had 1/millionth the computing power of a cell phone, when they had not gone in space ever, they walked on the moon in 8.5 years. That's the only time they kept the schedule. The most complicated mission of all time. And so what they're really saying is that they had 1,000 times farther space traveling capability in 1969 than they do today. Well, that's a historic and scientific impossibility, because that would mean for the first time in history, technology is greater in the past than in the future. When they blew up the atomic bomb in 1945, just 10 years later, atomic bombs were 1,000 times more powerful. So if they could leisurely drive cars and play golf on the moon with 1/millionth the computing power of a cell phone 50 years ago, they would have been on Mars. 10 years later, we'd be in another solar system by now, and there'd be bases all over the moon. So you can really prove it just with deductive reasoning that you can't have 1,000 times farther space traveling capability 50 years ago than you do today, which means the claim was fraudulent. So I started producing this film. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon, which you can see for free at Sibrel.com. 7 years to produce this $1 million movie, and 3.5 years into it, I pop in a tape and it says, "Do not show to the public" at the beginning of it. Well, I'm thinking, oh, this should be pretty good. I asked NASA for unedited footage. Everything was pre-edited. You couldn't even get the countdown going from T plus a minute to minus a minute without editing. There's actually very little footage of men on the moon. And in the first mission, there's only 20 pictures of an astronaut standing on the surface of the moon and 0 of Neil Armstrong. Believe it or not, I went to the archives personally. I said, pull me out a picture of Neil Armstrong standing there, still picture, first man on the moon. I'm sure you've heard of him. They came in and out scratching their heads. There isn't one. He refused to have his picture taken. How about that? So
can I just ask you? Sorry, can I just ask you? Did the where you said it said do not show to the public? Did that say that on the actual tape itself, or did it actually?
No,
say
that said it. Once you popped in the tape, these are big broadcast quality tapes, and once you pop them in, it said it on the screen. It did not say that on the label. What happened was somebody put the wrong label on the tape all those years ago, and no reporter had ever gone through everything meticulously like I did, trying to find a mistake. I figured if they faked the moon landings, they're more likely to have made a mistake on the first mission because they never faked it before, you see? And sure enough, I found 2 unedited reels, one of which I show. And a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. They're right in front of your eyes, using a 1-foot model of the Earth, pretending it's floating in space. The lights come up and you see it's a model. Now, the thing is dated by NASA's own atomic clock 2 days into the flight, where they're supposed to be halfway to the moon, where they're supposed to have the lens of the camera up against the glass of the spacecraft window and showing this shot of the Earth floating in space. The lights come up. It's a 1-foot model of the Earth. They're faking being halfway to the moon. And then there's a third track of audio of the CIA telling them to fake a 4-second radio delay because they're really in Earth orbit where the space station is, which is only 250 miles above the Earth, right? That's as far as they can send a human today. Otherwise, there'd be humans orbiting the moon on Artemis instead of mannequins. They can't send humans to the moon today. So how could they do it 50 years ago on the first attempt? So we have a third track of audio of the CIA prompting Neil Armstrong to speak after they count off 4 seconds on a stopwatch, because he's really very close to the Earth. So if he answers the question right away, it will give away that fact. So they count off 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, talk. You hear it clearly on the tape. It's not NASA. It's not the astronauts. It's the CIA. So I look at this footage and I'm trying to figure out what it is. And I'm like, they're faking being halfway to the moon. And I'm like, well, make sure I get this correct now. They're clearly faking being halfway to the moon, which means they cannot go halfway. And what a surprise, 50 years later, they still cannot have a human leave Earth orbit. Otherwise, there'd be humans in the Artemis, right? Not mannequins. So we discovered a classified tape of footage that says at the beginning, don't show to the public. The CIA is heard audibly on the tape, faking a 4-second radio delay, and they're using a 1-foot model of the Earth, pretending it's the Earth floating in space, looking back as they're supposed to be halfway to the moon, which means they didn't leave Earth orbit. Guys, I showed this tape to the news director at NBC. He turned pale white, collapsed in his chair, put his hand over his mouth and says, oh my gosh, this absolutely proves they did not walk on the moon. And I said, yeah, what do we do? I was working at NBC News at the time. He said, I can't broadcast this. This will cause a civil war. I will not go down in history as the man who will cause the civil war. Get this, 10 years go by, another news director at NBC looks at the exact same footage, comes to the exact same conclusion. This proves the United States did not leave Earth orbit on Apollo 11, meaning they did not go to the moon. They faked it. They flew me to New York. They put me up in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. They paid me thousands of dollars for the exclusive license to broadcast this footage nationwide. Breaking story, the moon missions were faked. They got a call from the federal government threatening them, and they backed down and did not broadcast it. So they didn't go. It's not a theory. It's a fact they didn't go. Now, there was certain information that I had at the time I produced A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon that I chose not to put in the film because dead astronauts' relatives told me not to put it in there until they died, because they had proof that at least 3 of the Apollo astronauts were murdered for not cooperating with the fraud. This isn't my opinion. This is the opinion of the dead man's widow and the dead man's son, who's a 747 pilot. You understand? She told me, I interviewed Betty Grissom, the wife of the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, but he was a boat rocker. He was complaining they were decades away from going to the moon, not 2 years. On January 26, 1967, he comes home from NASA, tells his wife, who told me, Hun, for some strange reason, the CIA is all over the launch pad today. I wonder why. Never seen them there before. Very next day, the guy's dead. Okay, he was murdered by the CIA, not my opinion, opinion of the dead man's widow. They were pursuing their own lawsuits with NASA and didn't want me to put that in the movie. But it is in my book, which you can get at Sibrel.com.
So Gus Grissom, when you say he was murdered the very next day, we're talking about the fire, aren't we? Inside the.
That's right. Yeah. They they blamed it on a quote accident, that for some reason when the engines weren't even being fired, a fire happened in the spacecraft, which is totally ridiculous. Had they not this? I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm trying to say what they would say, but hadn't they pumped pure oxygen inside, which was a pure accelerant? It's just going to explode. Yeah, but that was to help the fire make sure it happened. Nobody in their right mind would pressurize a spacecraft with 100% oxygen. Under those circumstances, steel becomes flammable. Okay, the Soviets did this, the Americans knew this, and it burned alive the crew in the Soviet Union. It was common knowledge. You don't do that. But the day after the CIA shows up, they did it, because Gus Grissom had prepared 2 reports, one to his senator, one to his congressman, complaining that they were a decade away from going to the moon, not 2 years. They confiscated those papers from his house the day he died before they even told his widow he was dead. That was their priority, you see, because days before he burned alive, he held an impromptu press conference without permission of the supervisors. He invited the media to the very top of the rocket, the pyramid, the pinnacle of the rocket, the crew capsule. He, that morning, according to his wife, who I interviewed for 4 hours, he was a bit of a gardener. He had an orange tree, grapefruit tree, and a lemon tree. His lemons were the size of a grapefruit, huge. He took a coat hanger, he affixed it to this lemon. Not about your country, but in America, lemon means a piece of junk. He sold me a lemon. That means junk. So he took this lemon, hung it to the crew door, invited in the media without permission, and before the world, the guy who's going to be the first man to walk on the moon says the piece of equipment to get me there is a piece of junk. Days later, he dies. The day after, the CIA shows up on the launch pad for the first time. Okay? So it'd be one thing if they faked the moon landing and didn't kill anybody. You'd kind of almost, if it's possible in a godly way, appreciate their ingenuity. Hey, they tunneled under from the dry cleaner, got the gold from a vault, good for them. But if they killed 3 people in the process who were husbands, fathers, you don't respect them anymore. And this is the greatest fear of the government, and why they keep defending the moon landing fraud is because if it comes out that the moon missions were fake, the very next thing they're going to have to investigate is the death of those 3 astronauts, you see? And so then the government not only took our tax money to deceive us about the moon landing, which is $200 billion in today's currency, they used some of that money to pay the salaries of CIA agents who murdered our neighbor brethren Americans who were going to expose their crimes, which are completely illegal. So the first document of the United States of America is not the Constitution. It's the Declaration of Independence, which says when any government becomes destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So the government took away their life. They murdered them with CIA agents, which were paid by the taxpayers. Not my opinion of the dead man's widow, and I'm sure she knows what. Can
I ask you a question? Just something from the timeline that I'm just I probably misheard it, but you said that he'd gone back to his wife and said that there was a lot of CIA or FBI, these 3-letter agencies on the thing, and he'd never seen it before. And then you said that he died, and then the following day there was lots of FBI and CIA. I don't quite understand.
The CIA agent showed up January 26, 1967, the day before he died.
Right. Okay.
Suddenly, I mean, we're talking about a highly secure area, the top of the rocket, which kind of has a building around it before they pulled that building apart in 2 halves and launched the rocket. And so, that's where they practice. They practice the procedures. And then one day, a bunch of CIA guys show up and start flashing their badges all over the place. We're allowed to be here. Very next day, the guy's dead. I mean, I wonder if the CIA had something to do with it. What a coincidence, right? When that's their forte. So, and why did they kill him? Because he hung a lemon on the top of the rocket a few days earlier and said the thing was a piece of junk. And they knew they were going to fake the moon landing, and yet had not told the astronauts of that decision, and knew that he wouldn't cooperate. He might hold a press conference saying, hey, look, these jerks asked me to fake it. I'm not going to do that. Then what are they going to do? So they killed him to get rid of him. They killed 2 other guys along with him to make it look like they weren't singling him out. And it was a warning to the next people. Do you want that to happen to you? Right? And so this isn't my opinion. It's the opinion of the dead man's relative. I mean, we have 4 proofs that the moon missions are fake. First, we have the logic. You can't travel 1,000 times farther into outer space in 1969 than you can today. I mean, come on, guys. Secondly, we have this footage of them faking being halfway to the moon right in front of your eyes over and over again with the CIA telling them how to do it. Okay. Then, thirdly, this is in my book. Okay. We have a confession, and the new information is the guy's name. I put this in the book, but I did not mention his name because his son was still alive and didn't want to have to deal with this because he was dying of cancer. On his deathbed, while I'm editing my book, okay, I find out that there was a man who was there when they filmed the faking of the moon landing. This is one of the chapters in my book at Sibrel.com. And he was chief of security at the United States Air Force's most top secret Air Force base, which is not Area 51. Every branch of the military has their special ops intelligence division. The Army has it, the Navy has it, and the Air Force has it. And their headquarters for special ops is at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico. Guess where the moon landings were filmed? Cannon Air Force Base, Clovis, New Mexico. The chief of security's name was Cyrus Eugene Akers. On his deathbed, he confesses two things. The first I publish in the book. The new information is that I'm about to say is not in the book because his son was still alive. Just like I didn't put the Apollo 1 fire in the film because those people were alive pursuing their own course of legal action with NASA, and they asked me not to. He confessed, Cyrus Eugene Akers, that he murdered a coworker. Now he's dying. He believes in God. And as best as we can tell from the scriptures, if someone confesses their sin and renounces them, saying, admitting it was wrong and I pledge not to do it again, you can be forgiven, even of murder. King David was forgiven of murder and adultery, right? So as he's dying, he wants to get right with God. He tells his son, who told me, he murdered a coworker because he and the coworker eyewitnessed the fake filming of the moon landing fraud June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968. On the first day, June 1st, 1968, President Johnson was personally there. He stood beside President Johnson. This friend of his, who he worked with, thought that it was morally wrong to fake the moon landing. He says, I'm going to tell a reporter to tell the world. We don't know whether he took this homicide as his own initiative or if President Johnson ordered him to, but he did kill him. And then he went on to say the reason why he committed murder was to cover up the moon landing fraud, which was filmed at Cannon Air Force Base June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968. And then in my book, President Johnson personally gave the chief of security, Cyrus Eugene Akers, a list of 15 names, VIP eyewitnesses who were allowed in to observe the filming of the fake moon landing. We published that list in my book. Some of these people are still alive.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you about one of the names? Because
Sure.
I did go have a look at the video on your webpage, and there's a name. There's a General Trudeau. Now, this Trudeau is he anything got to do with Trudeau in Canada by any chance? I've just one
Well, I don't
question.
know. That would be an interesting genealogical study. But he was with Army intelligence. That's who he was. He was the general of Army intelligence. And so he was there at the time. There was half the people on the list I never heard of because they were CIA, NSA, NRO people. And one guy on there, Robert Emenegger, who I believe is still alive in his 90s, he was a science fiction writer. And the military actually used him to intentionally propagate aliens and UFOs. The military, the government, actually wants people to believe them. And one of the psychological techniques of believing them is to make it look like a secret. You understand? UFO disclosure, UFO secret tapes released. That's to make them look more credible. This guy, Robert Emenegger, spent his whole life saying the moon landings are real and his whole life saying UFOs are real. I bet they're as real as one another. You see, they want us to believe in UFOs and aliens really bad. I was in a hotel not too long ago, flipping through the 10 choices on HBO. 3 of the 10 were about aliens from outer space. Now, if 3 of the 10 were about what a great guy the president is, or 3 of the 10 were about what a terrible guy the president is, it would be pretty clear it's a propaganda campaign, right? So 3 of the 10, they've been running this in the ground. They really want us to believe in this. And one of the founders of the New World Order, Dewey, he was the Dewey Decimal System guy, who basically wanted to use schools to indoctrinate people into their way of thinking at an early age. He said more than 100 years ago at Jekyll Island meeting, boy, it would really be cool to have an alien from outer space invasion so that we could force a one world government because we'd have a common enemy, right? 9/11, that wasn't done by Americans. No, it was an enemy. And the Iraq War, enemy. People forget when they pledge allegiance to the Constitution, not the president, they say to defend it against all enemies, foreign
and domestic.
Domestic, right? The greatest enemies and the people who perpetrated, the people who killed Kennedy, who did the Gulf of Tonkin, who faked the moon landing, who did 9/11 and did this little thing for the last 3 years, they're Americans. They're in the federal government. Those are the enemies of the Constitution, right?
But this kind of interesting, Bart. This is very, because I was looking at some of this story earlier on, and I came across a site called LBJ. LBJ. Hold on a second. I'll just get LBJ, the Master of Deceit.com, and he was whoever wrote this particular article connecting Lyndon B. Johnson into the moon hoax, and was linking it back to Kennedy, right? And hinting at the fact that possibility that Kennedy was taken out because he knew that they couldn't get to the bloody moon, right? So do you know anything about?
Yeah, I don't think that's the reason he was taken out. That was too far into the future, and most of these guys are pretty short-term thinkers. Like the whole faking of the moon landing is biting them in the butt right now because they're short-term thinkers. I mean, eventually, after decade after decade after decade of not being able to put a man on the moon, it makes the original claim seem all the more preposterous, right? I try to look at people and discern whether they're telling the truth or not when they're giving a testimony. I saw an interview with allegedly Johnson's mistress, and she said, and she seemed to be telling the truth to me, the day before Kennedy was killed, Johnson said to her, after tomorrow, I won't have to deal with these darn Kennedys anymore. So I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. He didn't have to be involved for the people above to know that if they took Kennedy out, he would become president, and he's more of their kind of guy. But I think Kennedy was taken out because he was going to get rid of the CIA. That's the number one thing. And then secondly, 6 weeks before he was killed, he started printing money without the Federal Reserve. If you can find a $5 bill from 1963 in a collector's shop, it says on there, United States note instead of Federal Reserve note, because Kennedy wanted to put more money in the economy, and he didn't know a whole lot about how the economy worked exactly. I mean, who does, right? Mm-hmm. And so he says, let's print money. And then his Secretary of the Treasury says, well, we got to get permission from this bank. And he's like, what? I thought the government printed the money. He says, well, no, not actually. The bank does, and they put our little label on it. So he says, that's dumb. That's going to stop. We have to pay them interest? No. That's going to stop. So he stopped it. 6 weeks later, he's dead. He says, I'm going to get rid of the CIA. 6 weeks later, he's dead. He says, I'm going to put an end to the Vietnam War. 6 weeks later, he's dead. He says there should be no secrecy in the government with rare exceptions. 6 weeks later, he's dead. So, I mean, if you saw the recent Oliver Stone film, I think it's called JFK Revisited. One of the most amazing thing in that film that just blew my mind was Kennedy before Dallas was going to show up in Chicago. And they canceled it because they uncovered an assassination plot. Then he was going to go to Miami, and they canceled it because they discovered an assassination plot. And when they got to the plot, there was the patsy. There was the Lee Harvey Oswald of Chicago. There was the Lee Harvey Oswald of Miami. They had the exact same scenario planned. You know, fall guy, kill the fall guy. Fall guy, kill the fall guy. I mean, the fall guy in Chicago and Miami must have been so relieved when they saw them knock off Oswald. They're like, oh my gosh, that was going to be me. It's amazing. They had the exact same plot ready to go. Didn't get him the first time, didn't get him the second time, got him the third time with the exact same plot, which was hatched by people in the federal government. Now, if that's not election interference, I don't know what is. They always want us to look at the boogeyman of Russia or China. Come on. Russia, China didn't do 9/11. Russia and China didn't kill Kennedy. Russia and China didn't fake the moon landing. The federal government did. I mean, they didn't go to Congress and ask for a vote. Who of you agrees, to fake the moon landing? And if we get a majority, we'll fake it. No, they did it anyway. So the idea that Congress and the Senate, the people you vote for there, matters, that's proof it doesn't. Voting. The majority barely elected Kennedy president, and that didn't matter either. They got rid of him. You see, 90% of Americans wanted to know if their bottle of ketchup contained GMOs. 90% of Americans agreed on something. Still didn't happen. The president vetoed it. He says, I'm going to go with the corporations who don't want people to know. This is not a democracy. It's a complete lie. The idea that the United States has the best healthcare in the world, it's such a lie, it would boggle your mind. You realize statistically, if you remove heart disease and cancer, the admitted number one cause of death after that is medical malpractice, right?
Yeah,
and then
I heard that. Yeah.
the statistical fact that 70% of Americans are on prescription medicine. Well, what does that mean? It means 70% of Americans are sick all the time. If there's a country in the world that has 70% of the population sick all the time, that's the worst healthcare in the world, not the best. I mean, come on. They call it the land of the free. It's the land of the slaves. You have to ask permission to open your business, permission to go shopping, permission to go to the beach. And if you don't get permission, they arrest you. They turn off your electricity if you have more than 4 people in your house for a birthday party. They did that in California. How could that possibly be legal? Why is one person telling another person how many people they can have in their home? How can that possibly be legal? So the federal government is getting rid of life. They're murdering their own people. 9/11, Kennedy assassination, Apollo 1 fire. They're taking away liberty, right? They're telling you can't get married. You can't have your wedding reception. You can't, go to the beach. You can't open your business. And if opening your business or having your wedding reception with 11 people instead of the allowed 10 is your happiness, then they're robbing you of your happiness too. They're robbing you of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Does anybody care? Everyone's so stuck in their cell phone on television, they don't have time to care.
And the last 3 years, obviously, like there's something very, very strange up, like with the, we can't talk about too definitively here on YouTube, like, but with a lot of these new treatments that they're bringing in, and there's clearly a push to depopulate in a sense, or at least debilitate and keep people dependent on a medical system. So yeah, we're kind of seeing like a pattern forming here, Bart, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, after this little scenario for the last 3 years, I started thinking, well, what have they done before here that I wasn't even aware of? It just came out like 2 months ago, this medicine that they've been prescribing for years to help you with arthritis causes worse arthritis. And just came out 2 months ago, this medicine they've been prescribing for years to help you overcome Alzheimer's disease causes worse Alzheimer's disease. So what about blood pressure medicine and cholesterol medicine and improves your brain medicine? And how long have they been doing this? You see what I'm saying? Generally, when a person gets caught speeding, it's not the first time that they ever sped, right? They've been doing it hundreds of times, and they finally got caught. Now because of this little, thing going on for the last 3 years, we're now aware that these businesses are lying through their teeth, doing the exact opposite of what they say at the peril of millions of lives. Now, another interesting little thing, if you don't mind, someone brought us a scripture. Now, Revelation is this weird book about the last days and what does it mean, and it's all confusing and no one really knows, right? Well, Revelation 18:23, and I'm paraphrasing it, it says about the last days that millions of people will die. And it says that poetically. It says there will be no more weddings, no more parties, no more gaiety. And it says the reason why. It says the reason is because of sorcery. Well, the New Testament was actually written in Aramaic, except for the book of Revelation, which was written in Greek. You know what the English translation of sorcery is?
I heard it, I think.
It's pharmacology.
Pharmacology. Yeah. I
So what
remember.
it's saying in Revelation 18:23 is that in the last days, millions of people are going to die because of pharmacology. It says it right there in the Bible. I mean, another thing, just a little side note, we have this barcode here, right? Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And this came out in the early 70s, and you see the barcode has a longer line at the beginning, but there's no number there. It has a longer line in the middle, but it doesn't have a number there. And it's got a longer line at the end, but there's no number there. I'm trying to get that in focus. So what is that number? It's the same here, the same number there, and the same number there. Now, if one of these numbers is a 6, you can look off to the, above it. So basically, this first line here is a 6. That middle one, that's a little longer, that's a 6. And this last number here is a 6. Now, they cleverly didn't number that. That's called the, medium number, the number that the computer uses to separate the segments. Well, Revelation 13 says, in the last days, the evil people who run the world will force, it's not an option, forces everyone, rich and poor, slave and free, that they cannot buy or sell without the number 666 on it. And here it is. I mean, so specific. We can't try to buy or sell without a barcode. You can't. So I don't think God's going to hold that against you. Like if someone pushes you down to worship an idol, that's not your fault, right? Only if you do it voluntarily. That's why technically they're not forcing anybody to take this medicine for an illness people don't have. Now they'll put pressure on you, but technically they're not forcing you, you see? And they know they can't cross that line. So here, you can't get more specific of a scripture being fulfilled. Everyone is forced. It says Revelation 13, he, the evil people who run the world, Antichrist, forces everyone, rich and poor, slave and free. They cannot buy or sell without the number 666 on it. And there it is right there, been there for years. And then Revelation 18:23 says, in the last days, millions of people will die because of pharmacology. I mean, amazing. I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. I better get my Bible.
Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy, maybe. I wonder sometimes.
Well, but I don't know. I mean, when I was first asked to do the moon landing fraud film by Bill Casey, who worked at NASA for 6 years during the Apollo program, who read a memo from von Braun to the Pentagon, which he edited to improve von Braun's German to English grammar. He warned them, if you guys try to go, before December 31st, 1969, like Kennedy misspoke and put this goal, Gus Grissom said, he would know, he's the pilot piloting the equipment. This ain't going to get there. We need 10 years more of development. Von Braun warned the Pentagon in a memo that I was told about from an eyewitness who read it. He said the odds that you're going to kill them on live television are 99.99%. And they're not about to do that. They're not about to make the American people hate the government even more during the Vietnam War protests. So the way that they were able to guarantee a successful moon mission was to fake it. In fact, the code name, which I published in the book at Sibrel.com, the code name for the fake moon landing, apparently President Johnson personally came up with. It was called code name Slam Dunk.
Slam
Because
dunk, yeah.
Because if you fake the moon landing, you can guarantee its success. Therefore, it's a slam dunk. You don't success, it's a slam dunk.
Right.
And here's an interesting little side note. President Johnson, because his first term was only like the last 20% of Kennedy's term, that didn't count as a 2-term limit. So after he served the term after that, he was eligible for another term in the 1968 election. To the Democratic Party leadership surprise, he says, I'm not going to run for re-election. They're like, what are you talking about? That's never happened in the history of modern America. A president who's eligible not running for re-election. They said, we're going to nominate you anyway. And he says, well, I still won't run. Because he knew the faking of the moon landing would be in the next term. And who knew that would work? Imagine if you got caught as president doing something like that, with half of NASA being in Texas, right? Didn't want to have anything to do with it. Another little side note. So Tricky Dick Nixon comes along. He obviously gave it a thumbs up. He didn't have to approve it, and he did. So this is proof it doesn't matter whether you vote Democratic or Republican, because Democratic president supervised the faking of the moon landing, and Republican Nixon approved it. Nixon does not show up for the launch of Apollo 11. Shows up for the second one after they got away with faking it. But he was afraid to show up for the first one because he knew it was fake. Imagine having a picture of you shaking Neil Armstrong's hand, smiling in front of the rocket the day of the launch, and then it unravels and they find out it's a fraud. Didn't want to be there. He was afraid to have that picture taken because he knew it was a fraud. Interesting. That's why Johnson didn't run for president, because he didn't want to risk that being, unraveled. And then Nixon doesn't show up for the first launch, shows up for the second one, but not the first.
Can I just tell you what problem I've got with that, right? Is that in this day and age, I can understand that course of action, that Nixon don't want out to do with this because he don't want to be exposed, or somebody don't want to be exposed as being a fraud. But really, I mean, not in 1969. Are people gonna see it as a fraud? Are they really worried that people are gonna find out that it's a fraud?
Oh yeah, they have to be worried because they've never faked it before. It's different.
But
if they
you must have
faked
faked
Apollo
other
11
things
and got
before.
away with it. Well, if you fake Apollo 11 and you get away with it, then you're not really worried about getting away with it for Apollo 12, 13, 14, 15 because it works.
No, of course not. But the initial Apollo 11, right? I don't get that perhaps somebody would have been afraid to be there in case it's revealed as a fraud.
Nixon was brought down by a newspaper. Okay, he got caught, trying to bug the phone of the Democratic Party headquarters. So he did get
Washington Post, was it?
He was brought down. He was the only president in the United States who resigned because he got caught doing something illegal. They never faked the moon landing before. They hoped they would get away with it, and they must have thought the odds were that they would get away with it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. But they didn't know for sure. And they already had to kill 4 people that we know of to keep it a secret, right? So there were already 4 people who were going to squeal. The crew of Apollo 1 and whoever Cyrus Eugene Akers murdered. And that's the ones we know of. So they did fear the truth would come out. Otherwise, Nixon would have showed up. 100% confident he's going to get away with it. I mean, why not show up? He showed up for the second one, but not the first one. He didn't show up for the first one because he wasn't sure. Nobody was sure. You're never sure unless you've done it at least once, right? You're a test pilot. You think that the aircraft's going to get off the ground, but you never know. And they thought they probably would get away with it, but you don't know until you try. You just don't.
Okay, how would they not get away with it in 1969? How would
What if the footage that I uncovered was discovered in 1969? What if a guy like me was at the first press conference at NASA in August of 1969, stood up and said, I've got a tape of you faking being halfway to the moon. What have you got to say for yourself? What if Cyrus Eugene Akers was there? What if he got a conscience sooner and he stood up and said, I was there when you filmed the faking of it during the live press conference? That could have happened. They're not going to follow Cyrus Eugene Akers every day of his life until, 10 years after the launch. No, he could have driven there and made his way in with his military credentials and stood up in front of every reporter from every country in the world and said, I saw you faking this. It would have come out. It could have come out easily. So no one had guts. That's what I don't understand. I do understand. When I was first asked to make this movie, I turned it down. I turned it down for fear it might be true. What if they did fake it? What if I start overturning these rocks? I could be risking my life for something Nixon did. No, thank you. And then I developed a conviction years later, after reading the Bible 5 times, that there is a right or wrong. And if they faked the moon landing, that's more profound historically than if they'd actually gone. And if that's true, I said, this is an important truth that mankind is being robbed of by a few people who think they're better than everybody else. So I decided to risk my life. And the reason why the book is called Moon Man, the true story of a filmmaker on the CIA hit list, which you can get at Sibrel.com in audio, I read, Kindle or print, is because after I made a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, I made a follow-up film, Astronauts Gone Wild. I had the idea, why not just track down some of these Apollo astronauts and see if they'll swear on the Bible that they walked on the moon when I know for a fact they did not. So I go to Edgar Mitchell, Apollo, 14 astronaut, and set up a TV monitor. And I show him the footage of them faking being halfway to the moon with the CIA telling him how to do it. The guy turns beet red. Where did you get this? Kicks me out of his house with expletives. With my back is to him, he assaults me, physically assaults me with my back to him. And in the commotion, I leave a wireless microphone on him. And in the commotion, my camera operator forgets to hit stop recording. So while the astronaut and his son are in their house with the door closed, we're recording their conversations in the back of the rental car, on the camera, in the driveway. 3 months later, as they're doing a transcript of all these interviews, the film secretary calls me up frantic and says, Bart, do you know what they're talking about before you U-turned and picked up your microphone? No, I have no idea. What? She says, they're talking about calling the CIA to have you murdered. I said, yeah, that's funny. She says, no, Bart. They're talking about calling the CIA to have you murdered. I'm like, yeah, that's funny. She says, Bart, you're not hearing me. They're talking about calling the CIA to have you murdered. And all you got to do is go to Sibrel.com, click on Moon Man video links, go to the link that's Astronauts Gone Wild, go toward, the second half of it, and you'll hear the astronaut and his son talking about having me killed by the CIA. Now, if they really went to the moon, and I'm some silly person who thinks it was done in a TV studio, why would the CIA care? Why would the CIA care if I'm going around saying Mickey Mouse was the first president? Why would anybody care? You see, so that's proof the CIA was involved. Some of those names on that list were the CIA. Betty Grissom says her husband was killed by the CIA. Why is an Apollo astronaut on this civilian trip to the moon have the CIA in his Rolodex, right? I mean, come on. So that my life was in danger. And then two of the chapters in the book, one is called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to CNN. And I got a few minutes left. Let me try to summarize what happened. I'm 3.5 years into the 7-year project, and I'm talking to Bill Casing. Okay, Bill Casing, who saw a memo from von Braun saying it was impossible to go to the moon in the 1960s. I think the CIA is monitoring my $1 million movie from a board member who builds rockets for NASA, right? I think they've been monitoring me all along. And then one day, halfway into the 7-year project, I pop in the tape that says, don't show to the public. and they're faking being halfway to the moon, dated 2 days into the flight, over and over again with the third track audio from the CIA telling them how to do it. I frantically call up Bill Casey. Oh my gosh, they really didn't go to the moon. And he's like, well, Bart, I told you. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. They really did fake it. He's like, well, Bart, I told you. Well, during that call, I'm talking. I can't hear him. He can't hear me. They interrupt that call. I frantically go to church that night, and I immediately, I already made copies of the tape and put them around in safe houses, and one out of the country, one out of the world, city or wherever. And I go to church that night, and it's a Wednesday night. We meet in a high school auditorium. There's 300 people there, 300 cars there. I'm the last one to leave, at 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, what do I do? I'm in deep trouble. I got proof they didn't go to the moon in my house with a blind roommate and a toddler son. And my phone call to my number one source is being interrupted. They said, Bart, you've bitten off more than you can chew. You better drive like a bat out of hell to CNN in Atlanta and pass on this tape to your friend there, who's a reporter, member of our church. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. I hated giving the scoop of a century to somebody else after I had paid for it with my blood, sweat, and tears, but that was good advice. So I'm one of the last 2 cars leaving. Okay, now just down the road, just a few hundred yards from that high school, is a public swimming pool, with the slides and everything. They close at sundown. They closed 2 hours earlier. And as I go by, there's a car backed into the driveway, ready to come out. He didn't come out when the other 300 cars went by. He came out when I went by. I'm like, oh, looking in the rearview mirror, that guy was waiting for me. The day that I find the tape, the day that my phone calls are interrupted, I put on my brakes in the middle of the road and I say to myself, I'm going nowhere. Not till this person is in front of me. Said I got all day. You could see the person stopped and they wait and they wait and they wait and they wait. And finally they figured they pulled out too soon, gave it away that they were waiting for me. So they passed me. So I follow them. Know the enemy. They get on the parkway going to town. I get on the parkway going to town. I look at him in the eye, pull right up alongside of him, 55 miles an hour, right? Now, have you ever seen those documentaries of the great white shark where they hold out a piece of meat over the boat and the thing comes up and grabs it? Ever see that huge glassy eye of the shark? You look into that eye and I say, nobody's at home. It's soulless. That thing doesn't care whether it's your grandmother, your daughter, your wife. It's going to eat them. It doesn't care. That's the look this guy had. I've never seen it in my life before that time. He looked like he would kill me and go home and eat fried chicken and not think about it tomorrow. And as soon as I looked at him and he looked at me, my car stops. The engine stops, electrical system stops. Now, a friend in the military told me they zapped it, either from a satellite or from his car, something like that. So I'm coasting to the side of the road and my phone won't work. And I'm like trying to flag down cars. I see this guy go down to the next exit, loop around, coming back my direction. So I walk to the other side, as he loops around. Then he loops around again. I walk to the other side. I'm trying to get away from the guy. I finally flag down a cab. I borrow his phone. I call the police. I say, meet me at a certain place near downtown. I'll tell you where that place is when I'm 1 minute away. I get there. I show him my media credentials for NBC News, my driver's license, and this huge videotape that you can obviously tell is not your standard VHS tape. And he says, well, there's no one following you now. There's not much we can do. You need private security. So I hire a cab to drive me in the middle of the night to Atlanta, Georgia, right? So when I get to CNN, I'm surrounded by government agents who prevent me from giving the tape to my friend. I ask if I'm free to go or under arrest. They don't answer, so I assume I am. I run around to the back door to hand the tape through the back door. I'm surrounded by more government agents who immediately take the tape and handcuff me. And then I hear them talking behind me. Where's the thing? Oh, I thought you had the thing. Oh, here's the thing. And I'm like, what are they talking about? Well, they all have like rubber gloves on, and the thing is this, like, it looks like a hospital ID bracelet they put around my wrist where all my veins are. And a few seconds later, I feel really dizzy. I'm seeing spots before my eyes. I'm throwing up. I was drugged by this thing they put on my wrist. They put me in a van completely black in broad daylight, meaning to make something pitch black, it takes a bit of effort. And then there's a guy in there, like speaking in tongues or something, like, I guess to confuse me or something.
Oh,
They,
you were as high as a kite.
yeah, fortunately for me, right as this was happening, a lawyer who apparently wanted to barely have a CNN Center address at a back alley door comes out. Otherwise, I might not be having this conversation. I say I'm being illegally arrested. I'm a journalist. They're confiscating journalist material. He gets out a notepad and then whatever. That's why I'm probably here today. In any case, they asked me a bunch of questions, prearranged on a clipboard. Where's the tape? Where's the original? Where's this? Where that? I tell them everything they want to know. I mean, you don't have to waterboard anybody, especially when we executed people after World War II when they did that to Americans, right? Write them a check for $1 billion or give them truth serum. They'll tell you what you want to know. So I actually escaped their custody. I had another friend in Atlanta drive me back to Nashville. And I said, I got him. I got truth serum in me. So I pee in a cup and I give to a friend to take to a lab in his name, thinking I can outwit the CIA. And I said, I'm going to prove that I was drugged by this exotic drug because I told them everything they wanted to know, a drug that only government people would have. So a few days go by, I meet with my friend and I say, well, show me the lab results. And he says, well, there was a problem at the lab. And I'm like, yeah, what problem? He says, well, funny thing, they had a break-in over the weekend. And I'm like, yeah, so what? He says, well, funny thing, the only thing stolen was your urine sample. So, that didn't work out for me. And of course, the people who ran the lab were freaked out. We don't know who you are, but take your business elsewhere, please. So all of this is in my book at Sibrel.com. Not only the deathbed testimony of Cyrus Eugene Akers, who eyewitnessed the moon landing fraud. We have
One second. You're talking about a guy called Acreage there. I thought the source, from what I gathered earlier on, that the source for the new information was a chap called Gene Gilmore.
Yeah, that's right. He was his son. What happened was, and this is
What's
not
with the
in the
names?
book.
What's with the names?
Well,
why the difference in name?
Okay. When the son found out that his father was a murderer, he notified the military police and the United States Air Force. And this pissed off his father. And they never spoke to each other ever again. And he changed his last name because he didn't want to be associated with the man, his dad, who was a murderer, who said he killed somebody to cover up the moon landing fraud. So that's not in the book. I didn't go into that little thing because the guy was still alive when the book was published. I didn't mention his father's name in the book because he was still alive, but now I can tell that. I didn't mention the homicide in the book because
Acreage would be his original name. Acreage, Acaerage,
Yeah.
Acreage.
Akers, Akers. If you get the book at Sibrel.com, I published the list of the 15 people that President Johnson gave to Cyrus Eugene Akers as special VIP visitors who are allowed in to eyewitness the faking of the moon landing. And some of those people are still alive. I actually called a couple of them on the list and got a pretty severe reaction. It wasn't my intention, actually, to call 2 people on the list, but I was asked to by some good guys, okay?
Okay.
I was afraid to call them, to be quite honest. I was scared to call them. I'm like, you want me to tell them that I have this list, that I know the moon landing fraud was filmed at Cannon Air Force Base, and I know that you were there at the time? And so they said, trust us. I said, okay. So one of the guys I called was Eugene Krantz, and he apparently was having problem with some sort of private satellite conversation video phone. He answers the phone and says, "Is this tech support about the satellite call with Cernan?" Which has to be Eugene Cernan, who allegedly died 3 years earlier. Little side note. Another guy on the list, and I forgot his name. I didn't know this other person I was asked to call. I called him up. I said, "Hey, you're on the list that you're at Cannon Air Force Base, blah, blah, blah." Click, he hangs up. Well, a couple of days later, and this is, I think, the reaction the people who had me call wanted. Government agents show up at the man's son, basically the eyewitness at Cannon Air Force Base, his son who gave me the information. 2 days later or so, after I called two people on the list, government agents show up. This is less than 2 years ago, and threaten to kill him and his family if he ever speaks to me again.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the government is very concerned that the moon landing fraud will come out because, I mean, whoever killed Kennedy, he's still dead. Whoever did 9/11, they're still dead. This is different. This is a positive lie. This is giving candy to people. This is taking away their candy and giving them a turd. And then to inform them, we also murdered people, also. And so the government is invalidating their contract with the American people over and over and over again. They're killing their own people. They're embezzling money. They're taking away freedom, and they're taking away the pursuit of happiness, which is to go to the beach or open their business. So,
And altering the perception of reality as well. As well.
well, yeah, I mean, what it means is, one of the things that it dawned on me, the faking of the moon landing also proves that the people who run our government are immature. They didn't have the guts to admit, or the maturity to admit, or the love of right morality to admit that, I'm sorry, Kennedy jumped the gun. We're going to need more time to go to the moon. That would have been the mature thing to do. That would have been the moral thing to do. But that means our government is not moral and is not mature. And these same kindred spirits are running our government, later faked the Gulf of Tonkin, or earlier faked the Gulf of did 9/11 and did whatever else. So these people are in charge. They're faking moon landings and other things. Every newspaper in the world said men were on the moon when in fact they were at a military base in Clovis, New Mexico. And just because every newspaper and TV station in the world says there's this illness floating around and this medicine for an illness you don't even have is perfectly fine, doesn't mean it's true. Because these people have lied before about the greatest event in human history. If they're willing to lie about that, they're willing to lie about everything. And then their openly stated goal is to lower the population by 94%, and all the people running the show say that over and over again. Then how exactly do they intend on achieving that? I'm sure they're not, hoping it's going to happen. They have a plan. They're trillionaires. They run the show. They run the military. They run the government. They're implementing their plan. You see, it's not a coincidence that after GMOs were introduced into the food supply, fertility rates dropped by 65%. Right? I mean, if everything improves over time.
I'm not sure it's that high. Is it that high?
The most recent report came out about 6 weeks ago. It says it's that high. The previous report 2 years ago said 50%. So it could have something
Japan
to do.
is dying, isn't it? Japan is dying off. They're getting more and more people dying than being born. So
they're achieving their goal already. Yeah. I've got to go to a meeting, but that's the summary of things. If you want the full details, the ones I didn't put in the movie, they're in the book, Moon Man, the true story of the filmmaker on the CIA hit list, and audio, which I read, or Kindle or print, at Sibrel.com, including all the interactive video links, 16 of which are in the book, and one of which is the son admitting what his father told him about being an eyewitness to the moon landing fraud in 1968. All
I
of
watched
that's
it earlier
Sibrel.
today. I watched that earlier today. It's quite compelling, and he seems like an honest type of a chap, kind of salt of the earth type. And you, if I caught correctly, you and him know each other quite well, and personally.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke for 2 years on a regular basis about this as I was editing the book, and he cut off communication after he was threatened with death if he spoke to me again. So you can't blame him for that. But I got the information, and so this is the sad state of the world. It's not a theory. They didn't go to the moon. It's an absolute fact, and because they haven't admitted it yet, then that means until the truth comes out, the federal government will be corrupt until the end of time, right? Whoever controls the past, the moon landings are real, and they're certainly not, controls the future. Orwell said so, which means the moon landing fraud has to be exposed or acknowledged. Otherwise, criminals will run our government forever.
And have been running our government forever. Well, Bart, listen, this has been brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. I know you've got to run away and go and do some more meetings and stuff. It's been really enlightening to us. Loads of questions, just not enough time. I've had a load of questions from the chat room relating amongst everything, really.
Well, I'm 1 minute late. Throw out one question. Throw out what you think is the best question. I'll try to.
Well, I tell you what. What about the? This is from Tony, the non-violent extremist. We call him. He talks about Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. Now, what do you think? Were they MK Ultra, or do you think they were just?
No, that's not the case. Although I'm sure they considered that. You really have to have an alert mind to lie well. You don't want a hypnotic mind doing that because they might make a mistake. For example, it's pretty clear to me that Sirhan was MK Ultra, but did he actually fire the shot with precision that killed Bobby Kennedy? I don't think so. I don't think he was lucid enough. He probably fired a shot in the air, and that was good enough. You know what I mean? And to put the blame on him. So they had to have mindful, alert people to fake the moon landing. And Eugene Cernan in particular, as someone who has a theater background myself, who's taught dozens of hours of acting classes and taken hundreds of hours of acting classes, the guy had training, acting training to visualize, him being on the moon. He was the best liar because he was on the last mission, had the most training. The other people, 2 of the 3 on the first mission, don't give interviews. And you look at their faces during their press conference, which I show, and a funny thing happened on the way to the moon at Sibrel.com. They look like they're at the funeral of their mother for an hour instead of in the winning locker room after the Super Bowl, which is how they should look. They know very well that they didn't walk on the moon, and they're lying through their teeth, and they regret doing it.
And that would suggest that they are not MK Ultra, because then if they were MK Ultra, then they would have been sort of programmed to respond in the way that would be expected of them in that way. But
like I said, it's not reliable enough to answer scientific questions, to remember all the details. I'm sure they considered doing it that way, but they opted not to do that. It was too risky.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's tons of stuff in you. I'd love to get you on. We'll get you on. We'll have to get you on again.
Maybe we'll do part 2 next, just answering the questions.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, because I wanted to ask you about the stars on the moon, and I was going to throw you a whammy or 2 about the stars and no stars on the moon. And right?
Yeah, okay. So we can do part 2. Just send me an invite, and we'll do nothing but answering questions next time. How about that?
Brilliant.
Yeah, we will do that. I mean, it's going to take me probably about 6 months to be able to recover from this working this late at night.
Okay.
We are. So,
I know the feeling.
That's what it was.
Yeah, we had a hard time trying to the time zone.
If you've got a lazy one-legged man from Yorkshire who doesn't normally do anything. And
Well, I
it
can
was quite
do
late.
next time. What if I do earlier next time to make up for this one? I can go to bed early and get up like at 5 a.m. where I am. So why don't you book it for like 5 a.m. my time? You know where I am, and we'll do it. I'll do it at 5 a.m. to make up for that. How about that? Meet you halfway.
Yeah, so that'd be like 9 o'clock here. So, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be
So
great.
it'd be three hours earlier than we did today.
Yeah, 3 hours earlier than we did today. We'll sort it out. We'll get it done behind the scenes, and we'll because I've got tons of questions, especially when you were talking about CIA involvement and all that sort of thing. And I did think that there were a lot of assumptions made rather than genuine facts. But it's stuff that we can talk about, and I think we get a good show out of that. So
all right, good.
We'll arrange it next time. Well, thank you very much, Bart Sibrel, for joining us this evening on a Tuesday night. It's been interesting. It's been late. God, blimey, it's been late. I watched a football match earlier on. I had Super Leeds talking to me, and I think it's a bit of a jinx because last time I spoke to him, well, the last time I saw him, I ended up getting COVID from him when I saw him in hospital. Thank you, Bart.
Good night, Bart. Good night, Bart.
Yes.
Take care. Take care.
Thank you, Bart. Bart's away there. He'll be back pretty soon. But last time I saw Leeds, he gave me COVID, and then this time he's phoned me up tonight, and just as it's fucking jinx, he's a jinx, man. As soon as he were talking to me, I was watching Wednesday playing. Wednesday played Barnsley tonight, and he rings me up, and I think, fucking hell. So I answered phone. So now, normally I wouldn't answer phone, but it was Leeds. So I answered it, and he fucking while he were on phone, fucking Barnsley scored twice against us. So I said, get off my fucking phone. Get off my phone, dickhead. Fucking hell. Anyway, I'm going to see him soon. I think I'm going to grab Adi and take him up and go and see Leeds for in a couple of days. So
cool.
Yeah, in a few days.
Send him our regards. Send him our regards. Free show.
I will. Yeah, he said hello to everybody. So everybody, gave you a cold. Fucking hell, yeah. You hadn't had a cold like that, man. Fucking hell, John. It were awful. I'm nearly dead. But anyway.
John, we nearly lost our Jay that time. I don't think you realise how close that was. Holy fuck, that was a close one. There was nearly no raccoons anymore.
No raccoons, I know. I mean, how would that happen?
Oh man,
I think people realise
how. Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think people realise how close that was.
I know. But you don't like to. Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
after all, there's no such thing as you know what he's.
Oh, big cheers, Tony, for that. He says that was a great interview. You guys were great together, and Jimmy and you were on the ball, mate, asking tough questions. Well done to both you guys. Bravo. Listen, I've got more fucking tough questions to ask him. And I knew that we only had 45 minutes with him, so we'll sort it out for another time. But anyway, we're going to go. We're going to be back Friday. Cheers, Jim. Oh, you want to say, mate?
Just thanks for tuning in at this late hour, everyone. It's fun. I totally enjoyed it. It was. I wasn't sure how I was going to approach Bart, but I did. I took a deep dive today, and I was saying, I think I'm going to like this guy. So it was fun. I enjoyed this, man. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, we let him go for so long. There's so much you can let him go for, but like if you want to pull him up on everything, then you're going to be there for fucking. You need a 6-hour interview, don't you? Really?
Yeah.
But I did try to pull him up on certain things that I hope that people appreciated, and it's hard, it's difficult, when he's going on, he's getting into his stride and stuff.
He repeated so much there tonight. I think he wasted more time tonight than anything else going over stuff I'd already heard him say before. So I think in future, if I was to, I would rein him in just a little bit and just let's deal with other shit. We know that now already. So
anyway, that's it for tonight. Thanks everybody. It's been a Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. We'll see you on Friday. I'll be at the caravan, and Jimmy will still be in Ireland.
I will.
We'll have a good time, won't we?
I'm going to be a whore anywhere, anytime, anywhere. I'll be a right old whore.
All right, do you know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to fucking buy you a plane ticket to come over here, and we can do a show together in my caravan.
Yeah.
That'd be fucking cool.
We'll
do that.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
That'll be fun.
We'll do that. And t-shirts coming up as well. T-shirts for every listener. That's my plan for the next thing, is t-shirts for every listener. Okay, so I'm going to do it one night. I've got this new thing, and I'm going to do it one night, and everyone who's listening that night is going to get a free t-shirt. And so It's all going to be it's all going to be good stuff. So thanks everybody. We'll see you on Friday. From myself and my esteemed colleague Jimmy over there in Ireland, keeping every ting real. We'll see you on there.